Hello, everyone. Thank you for your attendance to today's book presentation. I'm Patricia Alonso, the editorial manager of books of Common Ground Research Network. We will start with the presentation, and there will be some time at the end to have a conversation, ask any questions, and share your thoughts. So welcome to this talk about the book From the Spool to the City. This book is from as an experimentation field to explore how technology, community, and city can be essential part of community-based design project in urban context towards sustainable and productive neighborhoods. And today we have with us its author, Luca. He's a designer and PhD candidate at the PTT Department of the Sapienza University of Rome. His research activities focus on digital manufacturing and co-design practices within the makers community and how the latter are defining their role as producers within the urban context. It's really a pleasure to have you today and learn a bit more about your work. So, Luca, if you want to start, you have some slides to show us, so you can share your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. I also take the opportunity to tell you that to update you that all of you that I already defend my doctoral thesis a few months ago, and now I'm a researcher in the Sapienza University. So we keep up. Okay, now I share my screen, and I will also stop see you in a while. So can you please tell me if you can see it?
Yes, we can.
So, good evening, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for having me and for giving me also the opportunity of this book that is actually intended to be as a sort of compendium, a resume of my doctoral thesis, a journey into my doctoral experience, which focused on, as you said, on local urban manufacturing, and upon which, time by time, I've elaborated of a series of micro exercise built ultimately to test the ability of these labs to collaborate in local environment. And so start from the historical slogan of Rogers, from the spoon to the city, and reconsider it as a contemporary word, a word in which no longer the architect or the designer who takes on the burden of designing for the citizens, like if they are the others, it's actually those empowered citizens who, through technologies and knowledge and updated knowledge, redesign the cities and reconfigure it based on their own needs. And starting by the structure of the book, I will follow the same structure. This is a preliminary framework of the thinking behind it. So the reflection put in place along the path as the research that led to the publication takes into consideration three fundamental aspects. The technology, referring to those enabling technology, of course, in which social roles of communication technologies and the growing accessibility of operational machines like CNC and 3D printers has opened up to the birth of alternative production models. The community, second one, has the hybrid set of manufacturers that implies also designers, artisans, hobbyists, enthusiasts of different backgrounds, which thanks to this enabling technology generate different forms of also self-organization. So not from a technological perspective, but from a social perspective. And luckily, the cities has the habitat of these first two factors, which is capable of also optimizing the infrastructural and economic and ecological resources in a distributed while interconnected ecosystem. And the research itself has also the experience that I had along the path follow a research action approach in which a research through design methodology has been applied, therefore structuring each layer, which I was talking before, each layer of investigation that is made of desk and field research phases. And each step has provided new knowledge capable of to provide in some way input for the next desk research and the next layer of building as following the aforementioned structure. And this works on a territorial dimension, specifically so investigating the digital fabrication spaces within the urban context. And in this sense, questioning the role of design as designer and researching design, questioning the role of design within those spaces, reflecting on the models that enable the empowerment of the people, accessible through what has been considered as a substantial contribution of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And the research indeed investigate the role of designers and design while dealing with this technology. And with this technology and this movement and this culture, which consequently led also to questions the community spread that thanks to the technology, to the design thinking behind it, have simultaneously impact on a global and a local level. And therefore, the very first layer, which was for me the first immediate, because it was the most, as maker myself, was the most immediate. Starting from the technology, it was something like the cradle of the movement, as the accessible tool of empowerment for the citizen. And so the book started from a wider understanding of the origins in some way of the maker movement through technology in this sense. And in this sense, it elaborates on a very famous statement from De Masi that says, in the post-industrial society, the postmodern culture is produced by the many for the many. And in the sense, in the modern culture, the maker is not in the maker culture. It's not just a matter of products or services, but an exchange of knowledge and data that becomes awareness. And thanks to the accessibility becomes also crucial, of course, thanks to the accessibility of the internet in a sense, but goes beyond technical impact and productivity implication that can be understood as a social empowering set of tools, not only for, again, material or technology, but social empowerment. And this shed the light on open innovation as a strategy that goes, that arrive up to the business strategy, which relies more on people than more on technology. And on this, I started to question also the technological role in this movement. And these tools, indeed, I have to say that I make a little critic on that, nowadays can be hardly considered disruptive, such as 3D printers, CNC are 30 years old. The maker, let's say, revolution is a phenomenon of 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And we could see a very strong technological push towards better technological solution, but weakly support most of the time by better models that could retrieve insightful data from the application of this technology on a wider level. And that remind me of another very famous quotation by Price, a provocative question, which say that we could say that's still valid nowadays in some way. And for instance, we could find new ways to produce as the image biological materials and meat alternatives instead of thinking alternative reason to consumption, for instance. And in other words, alternative ways to model technological behaviors instead of objects, mere objects. And so the very first question that I put in this very first chapter was on the level of the field of research that led me through practice to the relation of design thinking and design technologies and enabling technologies, and to figure out how much those technology are enabled of a critical thinking on design, or instead were enabled by a design thinking approach for the technology. In this sense, these are very old-fashioned questions, like asking what comes first, is the egg or the chicken? And the investigation actually studied the technology and how the technology and design thinking intersect among experts and on non-experts practitioners. It examined whether technology enhanced design skill or if design thinking aids in navigating through the technological tool. And in this sense, while picking up different subjects, emphasizing on preliminary STEAM skills for yacht integration into design field, I developed together along with other professors and other PhD students at the time, different experiments in some way, like hackathon and courses for very young people, and aimed to merge in some way design thinking with high-performing tools, revealing design sensitivity to technology, and especially testing the limitation of these technologies, the accessible technologies at the time. And this very first layer of investigation suggests in some way that technology, of course, is nowadays accepted as a tool that require to be properly addressed. But in this sense, and this is better explained in the book, research provides a new consideration, a sort of new consideration, that we actually should be aware of the role of technology in order to use in a responsible manner, tackling not only ecological or economical matter, but also and especially the social one, has a mirror of the application. And design in this sense is necessary to provide insightful meaning on the technology, starting by addressing to the culture, to the community, to local aspects, to manage the technology and provide and ultimately insightful results. Move on the second level. I just starting to go very fast forward to through the book. The second level of investigation is dedicated to the maker community by analyzing the evolution of maker as a culture. And so it started by a very brief retrospective, considering, for instance, the Fab Lab as one of the most renowned forms of the spread of the maker culture, but also get deeper in other forms of sharing. Its friends reported, for instance, that between 2005 and 2050, so almost 10 years, the global number of fablets doubled every year, also thanks to let's say, due the crisis of 2009, the labor crisis of 2009, in which Gallard proposed the establishment of the very first public Fab Lab to propose new ways of work. And then, after a sensible growth started around 2017, in which the maker culture was about, in some way, in a populistic way, it was along with a mediatic indifference. At some point, it get back like a sort of revival during the pandemic, also the period in which I was writing the thesis. During the pandemic, a great series of local production and shared the which provide also again the power of open design and co-design practices in a moment of crisis, led the research thinking to glimpse in some way how the maker movement could act as a natural resilience response to social crisis, more than technological issues or ecological matter. And the research developed the interest as well, the need to investigate this phenomenon. And I remember that during the time I was reading a very insightful book by Gandolfi that dealing with complex system and evolutionary matter, he assumed that the great development and evolution comes from a critical situation which led to what he called, also taken from another scholar, the catastrophic bifurcation. And faced with this evolution, accentuated also again by the pandemic at the time, the will of the research itself wanted to investigate in deeper the transformation that were taking in place. And so from the research, it's substructured a sort of another sub-layers of investigation in which we could see that they were followed by a quantitative research, followed by a qualitative analysis of the data retrieved, and then a final proposal for a tool that is ultimately explained in the last chapter of the book. And so it started from mapping this field research of this level of investigation started by a mapping of the maker community within a very closer local situation that in my case was in Lazio region here in Italy, around Rome and around its city. 49 activities actually have been identified in this little region, and it's kind of sad and strange to say, but it was a lucky that thanks to the pandemic restriction at the time, all of them actually replied to my survey, and so I was lucky to have a lot of responses and a lot of data. And the first screening indeed let me understand three main clusters of laboratories. The very first one was public open labs, that were as the Fab Labs and other shared space. workshops open to selected customers or selected users, such as the university fab labs or university labs, and ultimately the private companies, but with activities open to the public always. And for each of them, I started to with a basic ground field investigation to analyze, to glimpse and find the six sort of somatic traits. Service provided, the technological implant, sharing activity, as well as the online presence, the accessibility to the physical space, the design activities involvement, therefore, for private companies intended as the consultancies, and the network policies. And okay, and those were the questions, the surveys I collected during the time at the time. And this is the very first, I would like to share this, that was the very first visualization of the data collected from the interviews, a sort of matrix that returns, that give me back a first picture of the local regional production implant. And then I decided to get a deeper understanding, visual understanding of the data retrieved. And which, of course, is further analyzed in depth. Each trait has been also organized in a radar graph, in this case, that put in relation and therefore find a sort of connection from between accessibility, which allowed with the type of service provided, the technological and machinery asset with the project and development asset, and the sharing policies with the networking activity policies. And these actually gave me back what is also in the cover of the book. It has been really helpful understanding the diversity of each reality and activity in the region. And the heterogeneity has been instrumental also to foresee the potential of the regional production. Moreover, this finding, I would like to share these thoughts that this finding, I hope that would be helpful also for the regional and local makers who like to seek for better services or design solutions. An important aspect emergent by the service and the data analysis that most of the plays are aimed to develop independent projects. And in this sense, which glimpses even a sort of feeling, local necessity, but then dies due to the lack of capability to be fully developed, and also because the network policies are quite, in some way, let's say, weak, along the effort required by structuring proper network of collaboration. And the research has so discovered that in most of the cases, some identities are pretty close to one each other, but never get in contact. And this is also get against the ideal of open and common ground idea as is qualified the maker culture. The third level was the maker city. And the diversity seated before helped the research moving on the third level of investigation. And in this third level, therefore, I put a focus lens on a very local urban context. So we saw how the research moved from a very general, open, wider context on the technology, therefore getting more on the region, a more focused area of the region, to get into the urban context. And the research conducted, in this sense, a series of semi-structured interviews. At the time were about 2 hours each. And with those best cases where competences and characteristics of a single place revealed a more dynamic and curious patterns. And indeed, it revealing another layer of clusters of activity carried one by each of the responders. And this work started to show a sort of pattern, a set of production in place, in which I noticed I explained 3 types of production and service based on their impact, and based on the time of the impact. And then I will explain also why based on the time. So producer of physical products, providers of technologies, and knowledge and educational providers. And in this sense, these interviews regarding this aspect, I made a SWOT analysis of a common factor that influence the concept they have of regional infrastructure, and the network they establish with the other lab at the local and more distributed level, and especially on the concept of openness. And both when we discuss about business-to-business relation, but specifically when we tackle the public administration, the role in the public administration role he has, therefore municipality and government, these aspects could be considered both a derivation and a consequence of a system of policies which show how small and medium enterprise do not get properly into a stable network, as I was said before, unless they do not have, of course, an established network, an established relation. And this leads to a common misconception of the idea of open design and common theories. And again, this goes pretty much against the maker culture in this sense, but they rely on maker culture. And this third level investigation, let's say, get to another sort of results that have been able to highlight the role of policies, not as a consequence of potential interaction, but as a solid base that has to be designed in some way in order to let bottom-up communities deal with top-down initiatives, which ultimately could be able to pursue better infrastructure to help the thriving of the environment. And I would like to spend a few words on an experience that I had in Barcelona, dealing with the urban matter, led with my co-advisor at the time, Massimo Minichinelli, which I really thank for his hosting, is really kind help in developing these thoughts, and especially for the experience that I had in Spain. And I would like just to shed light for a brief moment on the concept that provided by the reality of Ateneo de Fabricación, in which each spots do not rely again on the technologies, nor on the space, nor on the political context. They rely and get identified only by their people. And therefore, each spot is different, not because of different possibility, but because their people, will, and identity. And this led to a final, and this is still ongoing thoughts that I'm also still developing with Professor Minichinelli, which I also thanks again. And this is contribution in which we decided to analyze the maker culture on these three levels of investigation, and like sort of resume the thoughts, starting by the cradle of the maker culture itself, the people. So the systems, which are made of makers, designers that collect in a specific spot that are the maker laboratories, which actually provide and help the maker culture. And in this way, urban dynamics, in the space in which they fit, in the urban dynamics, aim to systematize the trends and predicts the change in this that is called the chrono-urbanist concept, which is not new at all, and emphasize on the proximity and resilience, particularly relevant amid crisis, in cities are pursuing principle of sensible growth. And this exemplified, for instance, by concept as the 15-minute cities. And this very last layer of investigation, in which we highlight the role of policies and the government, led us actually in this sense to understand where the issues were in the proximity understanding, and therefore in this interface that is the proximity, in which bottom-up initiatives could ultimately match the top-down government initiatives. And this is, I have to say, also in the book, I admit it, is still an ongoing reflection, which we'll see further consideration. And this is overall the graph that shows how maker culture developed around the cities. And last is actually the final proposals of the thesis itself that I developed in Sapienza. And getting back to Rome, the research dealt with the last part of experimentation, the last part of field research, proposing a tool which could be able to collect knowledge so far provided. So we have structured a living lab, we together with Professor Imbesi, a living lab in Rome that for 3 months involved the maker labs of different nature, dealing with design practitioners to address their proximities and their capability to deal with proximity, and opening up to community-based projects. 8 labs out of the 49 stated before have been selected based on their somatic traits. So all the data, let's say, get back to a fil rouge. And this time specifically related to their accessibility policies and geographical position. This was the tool in which we decided to divide it in nine tables aimed to study and define the context. Therefore, people, spaces, and outer space of the lab. And one table actually just to develop the project, therefore following tinkering and process analysis of the test, which has been led together with design practitioner, labs, and communities identified by the labs, and ultimately two tables, two formats, which has been intended to systematize a project as a user journey in order to let other people user journey along with a sort of like recipe for the project itself. And this is also explained more in depth in the book. This is also funny things about this template, which has been completely hacked by the designers in order to also match the needs of the data retrieved along the experimentation. And I have to say that I'm very proud the fact that they took very first input of research, and they started to add their own, not only about style, but their own information. So also using proper tools as a fil rouge indeed. And this is just a very fast roll, and then I can also conclude the presentation, but to show a very fast roll of the project, and that are also again explained in the book, that has been really heterogeneous between each lab, between each practitioner that cooperate with the lab, also because of the people and the initiatives of the communities or the industries, enterprises that they highlight and find around the labs itself. And so this, for instance, was a composable pot made of paper collected by other activities, print activities around the city, around the quarter, in the 15-minute cities, because that were the area, and made to design also is, for instance, this Montessorian table with a local school around that was found in the neighborhood of a lab. Or, for instance, this table, which has been decided, that is a table that collects games for a ludopub that has been designed with a local, very close local artist of the lab itself. And the artist, for instance, didn't know of the presence of the lab. So in some sort of way, design and designer in itself and the project itself led these people, this practitioner, know each other in a context in which they see in the let's say global market, but then blurred they get blurred in the local context. This is also another project in which they help a very traditional frame wood cover. They together with the lab and this tradition, this artisan of wooden frames, together they designed these laser cutted, completely custom frame, which was able indeed to empower also the artisan itself that learn about the tool and embed in its own offer. Another project of communitarian project, this gym box that was designed to open and accomplish different type of exercise, or these that help the citizens to design their own park. Another example of a design workshop activity in which children have been involved to design their own park toys, park games. And out of these 60 practitioners and 8 labs, as said, we developed 15 projects spread all around the city of Rome, which has been also described in the book itself. And I for sure run out of time, but I would like just to end this presentation saying that it's something that I would like always to remember. Of course, making as design as the research itself is actually a non-ending work of continuous development. And therefore, further development will not only involve the application of further findings so far presenting these initiatives, but also will deeper investigate the replicability of the tools itself, and which will be tested abroad, hopefully also soon, and to better understand not only the capability to deal with local matter, also to understand where geographic context could empower also the tool itself. And I really thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Luca.
Let's stop sharing, maybe?
Yes, perfect. Okay, just before we start with the Q&A, I'm going to send onto the chat the link to our bookstore where you can find the book if you are interested. The book is both available in hardback and digital format. And this year, most probably at the third quarter, it's going to be available also in paperback. So we will announce the release as soon as it's there. You'll also be able to purchase the book with 25% discount that we give to our community. I just sent it to the chat, so it's there if you're interested. Now we can start with the comments, questions. You can click on raise your hand, turn on your camera. If someone can't use their microphones, they could write their comment or answers or questions in the chat, and I can read it. So
I would like also to just give little things that I would like to share also my email in case someone would like to reach me. It was in the presentation, but in case someone would like to reach me for instance, for further experimentation, I will be more than happy to continue this, to export in some way this experience, because I think that one thing that I miss the most is the experimentation in a different context. I keep it as very local as the project itself, but I would like to share with the others in this sense and would like to test. So it's open for the test. So if you allow me, I would like to share my email again.
Yeah, it's perfect. You can write it in the chat, I think. Anyone that wants to make any comments or question, want to talk with Luca? You can also turn on your microphone. Megan?
Hello?
Hello, Megan.
Hello, my name is Megan Lancaster. I am an artist, and I am coming in here from Tacoma, Washington, in the USA. I have a question just regarding have you thought about how this what's happening, what you're tracking, what you're researching, it may relate to a shift into village type community that is, I think, something that is being done throughout the world at this point, but especially in Europe and in the United States, I know of, is communities that are purposeful, that have come together, where people are living together in a village type community, even if it's within an urban area, There's a lot of it in Denmark and here, and I think in France. And I'm just wondering, I see that as very relating to this research and how a maker community or a maker ideas, oh God, I'm sorry, words will not come, would relate to this research. Does that make sense to?
Yes, I guess that I understood. Is actually one it's something that I tackle. Something like that I tackle in a very brief way, because here I found a very fine book of tribalism, for instance, in which there is a very famous scholar author that talk about, for instance, the temporary community zone, no, in which people merge together for a shorter period of time to share common will in some way, as Beckenheim, no. The idea here especially in Europe, in Europe, I will not just like to generalize a bit as in Europe or in the US, because the fact is that when we talk about tribalism, when we talk about community, when we talk about this local factor, we cannot be general in this sense. So we have to tackle in a very specific way. When we talk about community, when we talk about localism, we have to talk about specific porter, let's say like this. And in this sense, it was my reflection on this, and I take the chance of the chrono-urbanism trend after the pandemic to cut in a very sharp way my tribe, in the sense that was at the very beginning the city of Rome, at some point becomes to be the 15 minutes quarter of a city, of a place, that in which the focus, the pin, was the lab. So my tribe was inside the lab. But since it's not only the lab, it's the city that provide also the lab, the strength that provide the lab, that provide, the people that provide the resources. I cut it in some way in the 15 minutes. I make use of the 15 minutes concept and the proximity concept to understand whether I could establish a new tribe around the lab itself. That was the aim of the experiment. And in some way, it was not specifically at the very beginning, because at the very beginning, I thought about a regional context. Then I thought about a specific quarter of a city. For instance, in the experimentation I did in a school next year to Rome, it was all around the people around the city. But then for the final experimentation that wasn't properly in my hand, I decided to use the proximity factor of the 15-minute city to sort of like define a tribe. And in this sense, again, I shaped, but it was my intention to shape an area in which I could identify people, in which I could identify resources, critical issues, and then questioning, are those labs capable of pursuing or thriving a sense of community through what? Technology, people, material, I don't know. This very first experimentation, because of the labs that I picked up, because it was a very short experimentation, was capable of providing different insights. And as the project that I will show, and I think that the project are the mirror of these tribes. Some projects were more on material, and so some tribe rely more on the material resources. Some other projects relies more on the capability to empower, let people have a sort of input, strategical also input for the public policies, like for instance, the organization of a public park. So not on the material, but on the involvement, engagement of the people itself. In some other cases, they decided to shed light on the educational tools. So more on the study again on the project of educational tool for children, for instance. So each project, each lab, each or others, for instance, just for businesses, therefore artisans, as I shared before, or artists. Each project has a sort of soul, let's say, and that was the mirror of a tribe, indeed. It was a temporary, because they worked and they lived as long the project was up. My idea, my final will is actually that this project lasts every time like an evergreen. But I also have to say this, and this is something that I'm still reflecting on this. These cultures, this community lives only due a temporary matters. They rely only for short time, for a period of time, the time of a project itself. As long as they do not design, as long as they do not bring something on the table, the community is still. This is something I'm still reflecting on, but this is something that I see after certain it has been past almost a year around the project. But this also match the very first idea of the maker culture as a resilience response. Again, Gaillard, when brought the Fab Lab concept here in Europe, was in 2009, when we have the economic crisis, and it was a response to the lack of work. Here in Italy, we have a very fine examples of maker culture, of distributed production during the lack of the DPI, the mask during the COVID. And we saw, a lot of people saw, and I'm talking about general ideas, so the makers comes in place again. After a very long time of this not interesting facts. And so to say, as long as there is the need for the makers, we are there. But like is a subtle culture that emerge when we need. So if there is the need, we emerge and we propose projects. That's like the aim of the tribe itself. That was my feeling here in Rome. Let's say again, very local, because I'm talking about that. So maybe in other parts of the world is completely different. I hope, because I would like to be surprised. So if I bring to you, sorry, you were saying that you are from
Tacoma, in Washington,
Tacoma.
the Northwest, yes.
Perfect. So if I bring this experimentation to Tacoma, I hope that is completely different. I hope that is completely different.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope first of all that I reply to you.
Yes. Thank you. Interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you, Megan, for your question. Anyone else that would like to make any comments, question? We still have a bit more of time if you want. If not, as we say, there is the weak link at the chat. Also Luca's email if you want to contact him. Perhaps some interesting research could start from this conversation. And well, there is
People are also start to think about it.
We have yes, please. Maima, you want to?
Good day, everyone. Congratulations, Dr. Luca, on publishing your book, and thank you for sharing it with us. I I just had a thought in mind, and I was wondering how relevant that would be to what you shared with us in terms of art, the maker labs, in terms of artisanal communities. Do you see them hosting artisans or more of makers, or let's say technicians? To elaborate, another thing, is it easier, more achievable to introduce potential makers to new technologies, or to encourage them to make new forms?
When you talk about forms, you talk about shapes, or I mean the product itself.
Correct.
Well, I mean, the very as maker comes from a technological boost that led technology to be accessible. Therefore, they started, first of all, they started to hack. They have the capability to hack the technology and make it more accessible. It was a subculture that comes from the idea that this technology was not technology for production, were not only for the industries, but belongs and could be managed also by the people. So for sure is in this sense, this soul, this aim is still in the maker culture. So, and it's obvious. For sure, it's easy to introduce new technology to makers. It's more interesting to bring, and in fact, is you can see also in a lot of maker project, it's more interesting to bring traditional technologies to the makers and try to find out a sort of common point in which tradition can merge development. About the shapes, if we think about makers, if they move in the digital space, and so if we think about shapes and digital space, we talk about 3D modeler, there is no limit on the shapes that you can have. So, and there is no limit in some way on the production, on the capability of a machine to reproduce that shape. Material also, and better technology, better CNC now are providing us to have amazing amazing furniture, amazing effect also after printing, and for sure shape is some sort to say the last issue that a maker could have. We could say that more on the shape is the meaning behind the shape that is hard for a maker to find, because this is not an issue for a maker, but the fact that each people, when they discover every people when they discover new technology capability, and of course deal with the digital technology, want to make everything, want to explore, want to have the more bizarre effect, and in this sense also in some way, and in some way get lost in the sea of shapes that we have. The design, the real insight that design thinking could lead to maker and technology is to give meaning to the shapes. So it's not the shape for the sake of the shape, but the meaning behind the shape. And this is not something led by maker culture or by the technology. It's led by design thinking. It's led by a designer which act as a sense maker. So it's not about the maker, but it's about the sense maker, that in this case is the designer. And the design led the sense. There is a very famous, for instance, designer that is Nathalie Crasset, that says that shape is a consequence of the logic. It's not something that you can design. It's a consequence. And I completely agree with that. We as designer, I as designer, you as designer could think about shape as a consequence of a logical path of a research, of a meaning behind the material itself.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that I replied again.
I believe you've covered my thoughts addressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, there could be a time for a last comment if anyone wants to participate. If not, really, thank you so much, everyone, for attending this presentation. Thank you so much, Luca, for being here. Let us hear about your research, about your work. It's been really interesting. Also, I know probably there are some participants of the design conference that's going to start next week. So I hope you have a great time at the conference. We are here anytime if you want to contact us, if you want to show any project. Well, thank you so much and have a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.